Welcome back, all you Kabbalers, elemental magicians, and magical malcontents. It is I, 60 Skills, and I just spent another day of misadventure in northern Thailand. I'm currently on location in Chiang Dao, and I just did a brief expedition down into Chiang Dao Cave. Disclaimer, if you're even a little bit claustrophobic, there are going to be a few portions of that aren't a whole lot of fun. But the reason why I'm making this video is you need to keep in mind that temples get put on top of places as often to contain whatever's there as it is to promote whatever is there. So in this case, Chiang Dao Cave is one truly unsettling place, particularly once you get into the back end of it. As many of you know, my clairaudience is not exactly the best in the world. And even I heard this kind of whispering, drawing voice in the background when you got to the very edge of where you were allowed to go to. Now, for those of you who might be tempted to sneak down here on your own and bypass the tour guides, I would strongly recommend against that for any number of reasons. First of all, the fact that they are using gas-powered appliances for light, even though there is electricity available, would seem to indicate to me that they're familiar with electrical flashlights failing frequently down there. This is typically a sign of some kind of etheric level activity, if not etheric level beings. They don't have a good relationship with electricity, and so smaller electrical devices tend to fail in their presence. Additionally, there are multiple warning signs like this all over the place that would seem to indicate that they have a problem with people getting lost and or hurt within the cave complex. Now, you're asking yourself, okay, why would something like this happen or matter? Why would something that lives in the back end of the cave even be interested in human beings? Well, some of my more paranormal associated friends claim there's an alien outpost within this cave that's watching human beings. I don't know if I agree with that or not, but it's an interesting point of reference because the entire time you're down there, you feel like you're being observed. Now, whether or not something is truly hostile often doesn't matter on the receiving end, which is a fancy way of stating some things are just bad for you, whether they intend to be bad to you or not. So an example of how, say, an etheric level being might take advantage of this is, let's just say the vital energy food supply in a place like this isn't going to be particularly high. So if it could lure animals or people into the back end of the cave, where, hey, maybe you just fall down and get hurt, or maybe it's just poorly oxygenated and you pass out. Before you asphyxiate out, there would be the opportunity to feed off the vital energy of anything that went in there. And I can tell you from personal experience, having come out of there, I was pretty tired at the end of it. Now again, it's not a terribly well ventilated place, so maybe the carbon dioxide in my bloodstream was just building up to an inordinate amount. It's often hard to say with these kinds of things. But these are things to keep in mind when you're dealing with interactions between the human and spirit world, particularly when you're dealing with nature spirits or that category of entity that are sometimes referred to as the Fae. These things have rules of their own, and quite frankly, interactions between human beings and those entities usually result, or 99.99998% of the time, result in the human being getting the short end of the stick. Now, there are a bunch of reasons for this, not the least of which is as etheric beings, or near physical beings, they're pretty potent. They have a large amount of free will, and they are also largely amoral, or whatever morality they have regarding human and their kinds of interactions isn't exactly clear. This doesn't necessarily make them hostile, keep in mind, even if it does make them, in effect, dangerous to deal with. And as I've stated before, for those of you who are out there dealing with and having access to their own Akasha, the level you can generate the Akasha at dictates the level you can banish at. So a highly charged near physical entity on the etheric probably isn't going to be very impressed with your mental level Akasha. I would strongly encourage you to not test this theory either, because quite frankly, again, if you run into the tiger in the wild, the tiger wasn't necessarily looking for you, but that doesn't change the fact that you're probably going to have a bad day. Food for thought. And if you don't believe me, go and check out some of the older fairy tales that exist around these entities. Not exactly the happiest and most prosperous of outcomes for most of the human beings involved. Again, are they directly looking to cause you harm? Maybe not, but that's not going to help you when you run into one of these things. And also keep in mind, there are some things that can't exist in the presence of sunlight that tend to be very old. John Michael Greer, in his book, Circles of Power, talks about this phenomenon of shards, or leftover and incongruent pieces of reality from the last incarnation of the universe. Now, we've covered a lot of territory here, but it's safe to say that these things are largely not healthy for human interaction. For those of you who really want to go down a rabbit hole, look up aberrant archaeology or unusual archaeology, and you can find a whole bunch of really weird stuff out there. So I'm not going to get into that because, quite frankly, we'd be here all day. But it's important to remember that not all places are safe to explore on your own. Keeping in mind even terrestrial problems like poisonous gas pockets and the like are a real risk when exploring underground. Even simple things like falling down in the back end of a cave can cause you any number of problems. And the fact that the Thais have predominantly put up signs all over the place explaining both a hefty fine and the fact that you're on your own in the event this happens is probably indicative of the fact that they've had some problems with this in the past, or not so distant past as the case may be. So Chiangdao, again, if you're in any way clairsentiently or energetically sensitive or have some clairvoyance or clairaudience going on, I would definitely bring a friend, not go after hours, and definitely not stray too far from the beaten path. Otherwise, it's an interesting, if only a little risky, exploration of what some of these things can be like. Fortunately, there are a lot of people around here and it's a pretty controlled environment. So if you're going to go exploring stuff like this, this is probably one of the better places to do it. Otherwise, as per usual, train hard and be well.
What is the best way to learn magic? Why Magic Camp, of course. Many years ago, I met a man in the mystic mountains of Southeast Asia. After several years of study, I found a way to condense these teachings and empowerments into the most necessary components for self-development. If you are ready to take up the challenge of pranayama, elemental magic, and body training, then join 60 Skills at magiccamp.click for more details. Training camps take place